Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today, Bringing the Trust Back to Zero Trust. My name is Teju, and I lead the product marketing team here at Veza. But before we begin, let's review a few housekeeping items. So first, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see multiple tools you can use. And second, all the engagement tools are resizable and movable, so you're welcome to move them around to get the most out of your monitor space. You can also expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. And if you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A engagement tool. We'll try to answer these questions during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later through email. Please know that we do capture all of your questions. And finally, a copy of today's slide deck and additional help materials are available in the related content tool. And in addition to that, we encourage you to download any resources or links that you find helpful. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Now for today's agenda, we have many different exciting topics for you. I'll get started by covering a very basic introduction on the world of data security. And then I'm going to pass it over to our CEO and co-founder, Tarun, who will give you an introduction to Veza and the different capabilities of the platform. And then we'll talk with our customer speakers, Dave Farrow and Riaz, both from Barracuda Networks. You'll see a great demo of the platform from AK Khan, who leads our sales engineering team. And finally, Rich Danliker will close us out with Veza's vision for the future and the world of data security. All right, let's go ahead and kick it off. Now, it's clear today that our lives have moved to the cloud and we're not going back. So resources like applications and infrastructure have already moved, and data is now in a cloud renaissance phase, if you want to call it that. But it's not just that data is simply moving to the cloud. It's that data is now regarded as the lifeblood, really, for so many organizations. And as a result, it's being reconstructed to meet cloud scale. Now, in the past, data, just like any other resource, was primarily stored on-prem. Organizations mostly had to worry about just employee access to data for simple, structured data sets. But even managing that was hard. So today, when we have more than just employees, we also have contractors, partners, and more. And it's also more than just humans that we need to control access to data for. Service accounts, bots, APIs too, for such a large range of data types across data lakes, unstructured data, and analytical data. And more importantly, that data needs to be accessed from anywhere and at any time. Now, what this means for organizations is that you need to keep your data secure at scale. And by scale, what we really mean is the scale of this multi-cloud era. Now, another big trend that we've seen is just the proliferation of different identity types. Now, identity has really taken on a new definition in the enterprise space beyond just people. Now, in the past, people accessed everything, and organizations were typically satisfied with securing just authentication tools like single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and more. But this proliferation of non-human identities, again, service accounts, maybe APIs that share data back and forth across applications, paired with that previous observation that data has been reconstructed for the cloud, means that organizations not only need to manage access to data for these identities, but they also need to manage what identities are doing with that data, also known as authorization. Now, as a result, organizations have to manage every identity to data relationship. And with the rise of cloud data and new identity types, these relationships become infinite, especially for larger organizations. Now, when we dive a little bit deeper into where organizations are today, when we see data in the cloud, the rise of all these new identity types, those are really both being driven by we can call it a second wave of enterprise cloud, where organizations are rethinking data security for the modern cloud ecosystem, which is really comprised of data systems, applications, and services. Now, what do we really mean by this is successful enterprises are using the cloud strategically, really pursuing business strategies that encompass cloud transformation and industry disruption. And as the cloud took off, we saw that organizations began to adopt a cloud-first mindset. But now the world's most successful organizations are truly disrupting their industry by betting their business on the cloud. Now, these organizations know that the cloud is going to accelerate customer experience, improve business processes, improve innovation, all of which does bring massive opportunity, but increased investment in the cloud also presents new types of risk, which brings trust and security to the forefront of today's conversation. And that's where Veza really shines. Now, we believe that data is truly rooted in the power of authorization, and you'll hear more about that shortly with Tarun's intro to the product. But with Veza, all your key teams across security, data, IT, and DevOps really have a single platform to manage any data security use case. We align with top-of-mind business initiatives that are tied to cybersecurity, redefining zero trust through data, really securing the acceleration of cloud data, and modernizing data security to protect against ransomware. Now, this translates into very specific projects as well for your teams across security, IT, data, and DevOps, implementing data lake security, securing authorization for any apps, managing things like runtime authorization, and controlling the proliferation of identities. Whatever data security use case you may be trying to accomplish, Veza is there to help you. Now, with that brief introduction of the world of data security today, identity, and a quick intro into Veza, I'm going to pass it off to our CEO and co-founder, Tarun Thakur, who will give us a further insight into Veza's product. Thank you.
Teju, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time from your schedule to give us a few minutes to share a little bit about our company launch and introduce you to Veza, our motivations behind building this company, and of course, give an introduction to our products and to our customers. So again, thank you very much. I'll only take 10 minutes or so to really just share with you sort of why we started this company, why we are so passionate about this topic of data security, and as Teju mentioned, give you a preview to really sort of our products that we announced as part of our launch. With that said, the obvious question, that probably might be on your mind, why data security? And, the way we think about this world is, look, if you look for the last decade or 2 decades, cybersecurity is not new. It has been around for the last 2 to 3 decades. And cybersecurity has been, a lot of innovations have happened, whether it was network security or access or cloud. But, our observation naturally coming from data backgrounds was, at the end of the day, while there's a lot of innovation that has been done around identity and access and network, organizations' biggest and the boldest asset is data. And to protect and secure that data is first and foremost. And so with that sort of a thought, we looked at sort of what does data security landscape looks like, and that's looked like for the last 2 decades. And it turned out to be these straight 7 questions that you see on this slide, which is from organizations like yourself and CIOs and CISOs like yourself are looking to answer simple questions from where is my data to where does it come from, to the nature of it, to who's accessing it, to entitlements and privilege and so on and so forth, right? And these has been, 7 canonical problems of data security from last 2 to 3 decades. And so, as we dug into this space and tried to understand it and met lots and lots of progressive organizations, what it came clear is, in spite of having all that tooling in place, the leaders that we spoke to all kept guiding towards this intuition that, look, in spite of having all of this tooling in place, we still don't understand really who can and should take what action on what data. And it was very shocking to us. We're a bunch of engineers, and it was shocking to us that how could it be that there's so much innovation that has happened, that why has industry not really cracked this fundamental problem of who has access to what? Because that is the sole way to go be able to secure the data. Unless you understand who has access to what, how can you secure that access? And so it really turned out to be what we call it as a critical unanswered question of authorization. The only canonical way somebody can get access to data, it has been for the last 3 decades, and it will be for the next 3 decades, is to be able to understand a user group role policy permission structures. And that's very simply called authorization. To some examples that, user stories, hopefully they resonate with you. Who could be those Okta users that can delete a table in Snowflake? Or which could be those non-human services, a la service accounts, that can go read from your most critical repositories like SQL Server, right? And why, we kept trying to understand the business reasons, and the business reasons were rooted in, all the way from traditional bread and butter, the GRC use cases of privacy and compliance, to advanced security engineering use cases of incident and forensics, to really utmost and foremost is how do we really protect the customer data? How do we really maintain that trust with our customers that data is safe and secure with us? And so with that, sort of motivation that the fundamental building block to protect in an organization is data. The only way to protect it is to understand authorization. We went on to go build, you started this company about 2 years ago, called Veza, and we went on this path that we want to go build a enduring, durable platform called the data security platform, but a platform that is built on the power of authorization, because that's the only source of truth. And so essentially, what we built is a SaaS service. Nothing surprising around building a SaaS service in the world. The world of cloud native technologies has advanced over the last decade. Patented about 9 critical innovations around this concept of data security platform. What really you're seeing here is a SaaS service right in the middle, connects to lots and lots of critical enterprise systems on the left, all the way from identity to data to apps, because data is everywhere. It's not just in databases, it's also in apps. And we bring all of that metadata sort of together in this powerful construct called graph. And on top of graphs, we have built great products and great applications, things like real-time search, things like workflows, to really address, technology by itself is not fun. Technology applying to business processes is fun. And as Teju shared before earlier, we've applied this product to fundamental data security use cases, all the way from cloud entitlements to access governance to privilege access to, hey, I just really want to understand the blast radius, so-called the least privilege. And really been very lucky and fortunate to have some great organizations that have put their faith and trust. They see the world the way we see it. And if you see the product underneath, the building blocks of our product is in this slide that you see. Really the core building block, as I said earlier, is this is what we call the authorization graph. We think of our product features, which is really where the value exchange happens, is really around these 3 pillars of search and visualize. That's the first app when we give you real-time search that any you, whether data person, DevOps person, cloud ops person, IT person, can answer the question who has access to what, to really building apps around access workflows, entitlement workflows, to really giving you a set of violations on where is the least privilege broken. And that's really the 3 pillars on top of the graph. In this modern age, everything has to be API first. And we took that really to heart. Entire platform is API first. So you could really pull in any information, any insights, any assessments through a set of very simply well-defined RESTful APIs. And on the bottom of the stack that you see is we want to apply to any and all critical systems. Today, we support about 30 or odd systems. We have taken a cloud-first approach, but kept in mind that a lot of data is still sitting on-prem. So we support things like SQL Server or still AD LDAP. There is still a lot of AD LDAP in the world. But we've definitely sort of, organizations are leading us down this path. Hey, help us protect our SharePoint repositories, help us protect our Snowflake repositories in the world. And of course, you have to tie the product with the enterprise fabric, whether it be ServiceNow, whether it be GitHub, whether it be Jira. Without that, we don't want a tool to just sit on the side. We want it to be part of your enterprise fabric. And really just to take you one more level deeper, how, if you're curious of how we've sort of, cracked this problem, is really just 3 simple steps. There's a lot of good technology built underneath it, but one is really connecting, configuring with your enterprise systems in a read-only manner. We understand how critical least privilege is. and we want to operate least privilege in your environment. So we connect with all your systems, understand the metadata spread across multiple systems at a very, very granular level, tables, columns, user groups, roles, bring them together in a powerful canonical object model. A canonical object model is the foundation of our graph. And on top of that, we give you powerful apps, which is really, it starts with, can we give you a powerful search consumer-like interface, right? Given where the world is going and given where the adoption of modern repositories is, we've taken product design as a first principle in our building. And so you'll experience, hopefully, in the product demo that AK will give you. And, the results speak for themselves. We've seen massive adoption, and resonance is what I use the word internally, that at least the way we see the world, organizations see the world as like that as well. Ability to take that technological breakthrough to solve a first and foremost problem of data security, but in a modern approach rooted in authorization, has been very well received across verticals, across Fortune 500 and emerging organizations, and we're very grateful. And one of the customers is going to be here. Actually, they're the first customer, Barracuda Networks. But I'll give I'll give the baton back to Teju. She's going to help introduce customers. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to meeting you either virtually or physically in weeks and months to come. Teju, off to you.
All right. Thank you, Tarun, for that great overview of the Veza platform. Next up, we have our stars of the show here. We'll be talking with Dave Farrow and Riaz Lakhani, both from Barracuda Networks, to share their perspective and insights on how they've implemented Veza at their organization. So Dave and Riaz, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Dave Farrow, VP of Information Security at Barracuda Networks. Have been for the past 10 years responsible for application security, network security, policy development, along with my compatriot Riaz, as well as incident response.
Hi, everyone. Riaz Lakhani. I'm responsible for governance, risk, and compliance, and now application security as well at Barracuda. Been at Barracuda for a little over 5.5 years now.
All right, awesome. Thank you both. So let's get started with some basic questions about Barracuda and the offerings for customers. So can you tell us a little bit more about what Barracuda offers for your customer base, and also why is data so important to Barracuda?
Yeah, so we envision a safer world for business everywhere, and so to that end, we deliver innovative security products that are easy to buy, deploy, and use. Most people have heard Barracuda as a spam email protection business, but we also have data protection. We have web application filters. We've got regular next generation firewalls. We've got a broad range of devices that people across businesses are going to use. Riaz, you want to talk about the role of data in our business?
Yeah, I think that was quite comprehensive, Dave. I will just add. So we say our goal is to protect our customers' entire end-to-end journey. So I'll say Barracuda is we're very, very interested in helping our customers in email security, network security, application security, and in data protection, just to kind of name the spaces. And data is extremely critical to ensure the efficacy of our products, right, is up to par. So I think I read somewhere data is the new oil, and it's no different for us, and I would imagine for most companies right now.
Yeah, and I would throw in there that our customers entrust us to safeguard their data. We handle their most sensitive data, including their emails, their backups, and their web traffic. So it's a core part of the value that we bring to our customers. It's very important to us to protect that and to maintain that trust that our customers have placed in us.
Got it. Thank you guys for setting the stage for us there. So now when we talk about some of the pain points you experience around identity and access governance, can you give us some insight into the technical challenges that you did face around management of various enterprise identities, managing things like access governance to maybe not just data, but apps and infrastructure as well? And then also anything around privileged access management and cloud entitlements? Maybe Dave, do you want to start with that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. So I came to meet the Veza team at a really opportune point in our journey. We had been banging the zero trust drum hard for a long time. And for us, what that meant was we wanted to make sure that for all of our critical applications, that we knew who was logging in and we knew that they were fully identified, that they were who they were. To a large degree, what that meant was making sure there was MFA in front of everything and that there was a unified identity provider that was providing authentication for all of those systems. What we discovered in that process was that once you got a strong front door on an application, once inside the front door of that house, which is the application, there was a lot of impact to either a compromised account or a malicious insider. And we realized that we were expending a lot of effort, a lot of manual effort, answering the question, once somebody is into something like Salesforce or our source code control or our bug system, what could they do when they were there? And so when we met Veza, we realized that there was an answer to solving that manual labor problem that we were struggling with. Riaz probably has a very different perspective on it because he owns a different part of the business.
Yeah. And Dave, I love that answer, Dave. And you and I spent quite a bit of time talking about the issues I face, which was access creep. So my background, given that I used to be a security auditor, I've seen this issue time and time at many different organizations. And, it's no different here for us either. Initially, when we looked at, who has initially asked for access to a certain system, and then you go back over a time frame and you say, okay, well, how much access do they have now? And do they still need the access that initially requested? You start to notice a pattern of access creep, right? It's a very hard problem to solve. And it's super manual to fix. At least it used to be super manual to fix initially. And the worst part of that is it's not just insider risk. If you start to think about over time, if someone accumulates a lot of access, that becomes a very attractive identity to steal or an account to compromise, right? And that's what was keeping Dave and I up at night.
Yep. Well said.
Yeah, well said. Thanks, Riaz. Now, in addition to those, the challenges that you mentioned, are there any, security focused or just regulatory requirements in general that are relevant to your business as you guys continue to transition data, infrastructure, and apps to the cloud?
So at Barracuda, we have, how many SOC reports we have, Riaz? Like 10 or 11 at this point?
Yep.
There's an entire section of the SOC framework that is about managing access, right? So yeah, that's why it's a topic of conversation for us, is that we make commitments to customers that we're going to manage access. And we get audited on whether we do or not. And again, that meeting that objective and that promise to our customers has been in the past a very manual and laborious process.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would add, as Dave mentioned, we SOC 2 Type 2 is top of mind for us. That's a security assurance commitment we make to our customers, and it's a huge chunk of it is around access management. But in addition to that, I would say, given the business Barracuda's in, and I think, Dave, you kind of explained in the beginning, we manage our customers. We have access to our customers' backup and email and all this critical data. So the way we look at it is any regulatory requirement our customer is obligated to, we should be thinking about that. That should be very natural for us to say, we need to be top of all those changes that are coming down and start implementing and factoring those requirements. So, when you talk about GDPR or CCPA or even HIPAA, we're not a covered entity, but we care about these requirements and frameworks very, very dearly.
You know, as a security practitioner, compliance frameworks for a long time were kind of a dirty word for me. But really what I've discovered, especially with working closely with RIAs, is that the QA, the quality assurance process for ensuring that we're delivering on the security best practices that we've promised to our customers, right? And so as RIAs and I have worked through this together, you know, yes, we have regulatory objectives that we've got to hit, but the fact is those regulatory objectives are pointing to the best practices that represent the trustworthy practices that we commit to personally to implementing for our customers. And being able to do that more effectively was really a high priority for us and was a lot of the driver for moving forward with Veza. We weren't looking to just check a compliance box. We were looking to actually nail the function because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great response. Thank you. Now, you know, given, you know, we talked about some of the challenges that you face, regulatory requirements. And so given all of that, was there any specific criteria that you used when making the decision to partner with Veza and implement the product? You want to start, Riaz, on this one?
Yeah, I can start on this one. You know, this one was really simple for me. I didn't see a point in having, you know, multiple. I think I'll speak for a good portion of the security practitioners out there. Nobody wants to have multiple tools to solve the same problem. And when Dave and I said, okay, we need to set out to go find a solution that can help us with our, you know, identity access strategy, we kept coming across a lot of different companies that would solve a piece of the puzzle for us, right? We'll say, well, we can help you with the access creep and access management when it comes to your public cloud providers, or, you know, name a specific system here, XYZ, right? We couldn't, until Veza, we couldn't find a solution that was fully comprehensive. When we said, look, our concern doesn't stop with just public cloud. We have all these homegrown systems that we care about as well. The response we got was, great. We can consume all that data. We can still stitch all the identity and permissions, regardless of if it's a homegrown system or if it's just a public cloud provider. And so that comprehensive view was the key factor for us.
Got it.
Well said.
And then David, the additional insight there.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a funny story in the initial meeting with the Veza team. I remember them saying, we can tell you down to the column level who has access to what databases. I said, that's wonderful. But what keeps me up at night is the fact that there's one application that we built in-house that has access to this whole table. And there's an unknown, it wasn't unknown to me, but there was a large number of people that have access to that application. And what I saw with Veza was an engine that takes identities and ties them together with data sources. It draws a picture that a human can reason about in real time that explains the implications of the security groups that we've set up. And the willingness of the Veza team to see their product as an engine and to open that engine up to an API that allows me to introduce authorization models that Veza's never going to get to, because I mean, they're private applications. It wouldn't make commercial sense. You know, it wouldn't be technically possible without access to our environment. That willingness to say, we want to get out of your way. I mean, we're going to go gangbusters building as much, you know, sort of first-class citizens in our environment. You know, all of the public clouds, all of the data sources that you're building, we're going to build those out. But when there is something that keeps you awake at night, we're also going to let you introduce that to our system as well. And that was the game changer for us. That was when I said that this is the tool that we need, because I haven't found anybody else that thought that way about their product or that implemented it. And that was really the thing that sold us, because that's where a lot of our risk that we need to manage is in those homegrown systems that have a lot of privileged access. And I don't think we're alone in that. Any SaaS business has this type of support infrastructure that needs to be managed carefully.
Yeah, and I know I speak for our team when I say that you've definitely helped us immensely with that open authorization API. You even wrote some of the integrations for us, so we greatly appreciate that. I'm looking forward to having you help us even more in the future. Right. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about here is, do you envision, Veza maybe helping other organizations in the business, or do you think that data may be more easily shared across the business because Veza has been implemented?
I mean, I think Riz's vision for democratizing access reviews really answers that. And he tells that story better than I do.
I'm happy to break down how my thought of how we're going to elevate and really further mature at Barracuda is by decentralizing how we do access management, access reviews using Veza. And so our plan is to have different teams and different managers plug into Veza and be able to see what we call the full visual view of different identities and different permissions, and see that stitching live, right? And be able to say, is this appropriate? Is this appropriate? Has this access gone stale? And being able to create that muscle so there's a regular cadence of doing that, I think that's going to just change the game for us.
Got it.
And I think it can change the game for the industry. If it just becomes a normal part of the management process to ask, do these folks still need access to these things? Right? Those doing access reviews at a corporate level is really hard because it's difficult to really know the context, right? But doing it at a democratized level is really hard because until Veza, it was an enormously manual process. And the folks they've got day jobs, right? Their job isn't governance. And so making the right thing easy is really what we're seeing here.
Got it.
I love, sorry, I'll add. Yeah. I love that you say, Dave, making the right thing easy, because I think that's the key, right? We've at some point in our career, we've all spent time doing reviews in like Excel files to understand, who has access to what, but making intelligent decisions with data at your fingertips, that just makes it super easy to kind of move through large data set, but also makes it really impactful, right? And we're talking about, I think we've talked about access going stale or access creep happening. And if you could see that live, you could see XYZ identity that's retained this access for 3 years and has never utilized it in over 30 days. That makes it super easy where you're not just checking the box, but you're getting data to make intelligent decisions that you can see is instantly reducing risk to your organization. I think that's the key.
Yeah, awesome. I love your passion there. It's great to hear. So I think that kind of naturally leads into our last question here. So if we could, leave the audience with, what is one of the most immediate or obvious advantages that you've discovered after implementing Veza?
I think the thing that I suspected when we started, but and I remain surprised by, is just how complicated our security group design is. Mm-hmm. Right? Imagine, I guess what I was surprised to figure out is that the people who create security groups or request that they be created at a time, time A at some point, they don't leave behind a trail saying what that group was for. And so, I look around, I'm trying to grant access, I see a security group called security team. I think, that seems like the right thing to do to grant access to this application. And that might have just been an email alias for something, or a group just for email. And you end up with these unintended consequences that go much deeper than we expected that they would. And where they've led us is to a realization that we actually need to go back and restructure a number of things so that we can actually grant access at the right levels.
Yeah, I'll echo the same learning, Dave. I think the ability to understand and learn how different group structures can impact different group structures in an identity provider can pass on unintended access to a user that ends up in one of those groups has been super eye-opening of an experience. You realize you need access to one particular system, but if an AD group is structured in a way where a lot more access was baked in for that group and you end up in that group, now all of a sudden you have ability to do a lot more, right? Being able to do discovery on that is very, very helpful to do cleanup exercises. But also for me, just simple investigation, right? Like that's a huge advantage. Being able to answer a simple question of, does John Doe have access to do name whatever, right? It's a very simple question that I think, we get asked. And when you start looking, it's a very, very challenging question to answer. I'm sure it's a little bit easier for a small organization, but when you start growing, right, when you get a little bit larger, that's a very challenging question, right? It's not as easy to answer anymore.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I guess the other thing that I would point out here is that we have been very cognizant of managing access and using security groups, and thinking through this. And it's been done by competent folks with the right intentions. And it's still very, very easy to introduce a change in that environment without knowing what the impact is. And until Veza was there to throw the whole picture up on the screen for you, it was very difficult to even notice that you had made a mistake. So, even with teams of goodwill, it's an extremely difficult problem.
Yeah. I imagine that becomes even more complicated the larger an organization is, or if you're, on a team with very limited resources, of course, right. Becomes more difficult. All right. I want to thank you guys both for joining us today. I know I speak on behalf of the whole Veza team when I say that your insights have helped us immensely. You've really both been here with us from the beginning here, just to make sure we've been building the correct solution for the industry at large. And we've very much appreciated your insights and looking forward to continue working with you guys for years to come.
It's been fun watching you guys grow, and we're looking forward to a strong future ahead.
Awesome.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate that. All right. So now moving on to our next topic, which is also a fun one. We have AK Khan from our sales engineering team, our head of sales engineering, who will be showing us an overview of Veza's platform. So AK, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
Thank you so much, Teju. Veza has broad applicability around the type and depth of systems that we connect to. In this demo, we'll showcase how Veza can provide identity-centric security across identity providers like Okta, Azure AD, Active Directory, Cloud IAM environments like AWS IAM, GCP IAM, Azure RBAC, and data systems like Snowflake, S3, SharePoint, and even applications like GitHub. We'll start with a basic demo. Through Veza search, I'm very quickly able to pull up all the tables that I have in my Snowflake environment. And through Veza tags, or the tagging that I may have already done for my data, I can pinpoint to sensitive data in my environment. So here in this case, I can see that there are 2 tables that have sensitive data. Now I can ask the question, which of my users have access to this data? In this case, I see that there are 5 Okta users who have access to these 2 critical Snowflake tables. I can then drill down further and ask which of these users can actually delete data in Snowflake. And I can get the answer that, in this case, Jim Lester, a user, can delete data in these 2 Snowflake tables. I can then drill into how Jim is getting access into these tables. And here I can see that Jim in Okta is assigned to this local user, which can assume these nested roles in Snowflake. And that is allowing him to do write, delete, and read of this data. This WDR is a really powerful capability called Veza Effective Permissions, where we have translated the backend permissions of Snowflake, which in this case mean delete, insert, select, and update, into effective permissions of write, delete, read. So any auditor and security person can quickly look at it and say, this is the access Jim has. And we have normalized these permissions for all platforms, be it S3 buckets, be it Redshift tables, be it SharePoint sites, or even GitHub repos. For all those platforms, you will always deal with the language of CRUD. Can they either create, update, or delete? We can also expand this and see how is everybody getting access to it and highlight some anomalies. So with Veza's violations capability, I can quickly see that there are certain roles available in Snowflake where they've not had any activity in the last 30 days. Or that the user Jim actually is getting access to Snowflake through a direct assignment, bypassing local groups, which all the other users are going through. In this case, Chrissy is going through the finance data group assignment in Okta, which is giving her the finance data role, whereas Jim is directly assigned, and this is considered a violation, and Veza can quickly track that and notify you of these violations. Another powerful capability of Veza is the graph history, which is the permissions that you look at today can also be compared with permissions in the past. So you can see what Jim had access to today or what he had access to yesterday or a week ago. This comes in handy during job changes, as well as when people leave their employment. A lot of people have lingering access. So Veza provides this time machine capability to go back and clean these permissions. Veza works obviously for popular data systems like Snowflake, but also for things like S3 bucket. And I can run a broader query in terms of answering the question, who all has access to my S3 bucket? So in this example, if I start from right to left, I can see I have an S3 bucket called product, and I can see which AWS IAM roles have access to it, but also which local users have access to it, and which local service accounts have access to it, in addition to your more traditional federated users. Traditionally, through systems like Azure AD and Okta, you can map to AWS IAM roles, but they will not tell you which service principals or local users have access to your data. And this is a really powerful part of Veza's capabilities that sheds light on this type of access in your environment. Veza works from popular cloud sources like S3 buckets, Redshift tables, SharePoint sites, but also things like GitHub. So I can write a query and say, show me who all has access to my GitHub. And here very quickly I can see I have users, Carlos in this case, which maps to CDs in GitHub. And these are the GitHub groups Carlos is a member of. And these are the capabilities, permissions Carlos has in GitHub. Veza can also highlight accounts which are not tied back to the IDP. So in this case, you can see there is a local account that was created for a certain purpose. And Veza can help you pinpoint very quickly around what can this local account do and perform operations on what data in your environment. So allowing governance around these typically non-IDP, ungoverned accounts is also a very powerful capability Veza has. So far, we have been focusing on a resource-centric search of the platform, but Veza does have the ability to start with a user as well. So in this example, I will start with a user, Agnes. And I can see what all does Agnes have access to in this environment. So Agnes, in this case, is an Azure AD user. And I can very quickly see Agnes's account is synchronized with AD. And Agnes is a member of these groups. And Veza keeps track of the nesting in the groups. And because of these groups, Agnes has these roles cross-cloud, in this case, Azure, as well as AWS. This type of information is available in IDPs like Okta and Azure AD. Where Veza adds value is we can take these group and role assignments and translate them into what kind of policies are applicable to Agnes because of these role assignments. We then translate those policies into what kind of services and networks and actual data instances Agnes can access, all the way down to database tables or buckets. So at any given point, I can answer the question, how is Agnes getting access to the prices table in my SQL Server database. And I can see that because I put Agnes in the group AD group backend, Agnes can write, change metadata, and perform certain non-data operations on this prices database. Traditionally, this type of information is really hard to pull. And as soon as you pull it and compile it in a spreadsheet, it is out of date. Veza constantly keeps this information up to date to be able to answer very, very complex questions like this. Veza works not only for cloud platforms, but it also works for on-premise systems. So a lot of our customers still have data on-premise databases like SQL Server. So in this example, search for, show me all my SQL Server databases in this environment. And here, instead of mapping it to an Okta user or an Azure user, I can actually map to either a local SQL user or an Active Directory on-premise user. So I can see very quickly which of my AD users have access to what databases and tables in this environment. And I can answer the question, what and how is Bob Smith getting access to in my SQL environment? And I can see, because I put Bob Smith in this developer group, he maps to these local users, and he can perform all these write, delete, read, and change metadata operations in my SQL environment. This capability is really powerful and provides our customers a lot of ability to drill into very complex IAM configurations as well as data permissions in their environment. A lot of our customers have said the graph is great, but they also want insights from the data that Veza collects. So out of the box, Veza comes with a lot of reports and insights. We will highlight your top risks. We will give you information around your data misconfigurations. If you find things like there are Snowflake users with no permissions, Snowflake users without a default role, or even things like your S3 buckets that may be unencrypted, or your infrastructure misconfiguration. We also highlight things like dormant entities. You have roles that have not been active in the last 30 days. You have Okta users who have not had any activity. You have Snowflake users or roles which have not had any activity in your environment. All the data that Veza stores is temporal. So we push this information into your environment using rules. Rules is a Veza capability so that any query that you have seen so far, be it a local user was created in Snowflake, or Veza detected an Okta group that has no users, or here is a user account that has not been used in the last 30 days. Even granular things around if the privileges have suddenly been increased, or things like there are certain sensitive buckets where somebody had read access before and now they have write access. Veza constantly monitors that, and it can deliver those via alerts into things like ServiceNow, send you an email, open a Jira ticket, or even call a webhook. And in this example, Veza can send you a Slack message that, hey, I detected some Okta users who have not accessed a Redshift table in the last 30 days, for example. Or I detected a new local user was created in Snowflake outside of Okta or Azure AD. These are insights that we can deliver directly and help you orchestrate, making these insights actionable. So you don't need to come to the Veza dashboard to take action on any of this information. You can very quickly receive it and orchestrate it with your existing workflows rather than relying on a human to come in and manipulate Veza to get this information out. Next, on this very powerful platform, we have built access workflows. The idea behind access workflows is graph is great for forensics and understanding relationships. But people still want their auditors or their line managers to do access reviews. So in the previous example where we were showing you Jim Lester having some access into a database, this is a view that an auditor will see where they will log in and they will see that Jim, on top you can see, has Snowflake table access with delete, read, and write permissions on payment methods in Snowflake. This is extremely powerful because this is giving them context so they can decide should they approve this access or should they reject this access. This helps bubble up anomalous access or over-permissioning much easier than more traditional tools where it doesn't have the richness of data. It's just telling you somebody's a member of a certain group or a role or an app. But that is not enough to decide should they have access to a certain data system or certain table or whatever the level of granularity you're looking for. With Veza's easy-to-use access review and workflows, you can very quickly drill into this. We also give additional context. So at any given point, if you want to understand how is Jim getting access to this, you can definitely go back to the privilege graph and see that Jim can assume these roles, and that is giving him this access. And from this screen, once you click approve or reject, you can again leverage webhooks so that if somebody has accepted a review, an alert is sent. Or if somebody has rejected, another alert is sent, or in certain case, it may also involve calling something like an Okta workflows to remove somebody from a group, or calling an API, or opening a ServiceNow ticket. The possibilities are literally endless in that case. So you can tie our workflows with your existing environmental tools to actually remediate at that point as well. These workflows can be configured to be assigned to a manager, or a data owner, or an app owner. And these workflows are not limited just to Okta users to Snowflake table or S3 buckets. You can, since this is a graph, you can also certify your local users, your AWS IAM users, your service principals, your local accounts. So your data owners can on a periodic basis say, here are the local Snowflake service accounts I approve. And if they don't over time, they can reject that and remediate that. This reduces the massive attack surface of these local and over-permission accounts that people have in these environments. So this was a quick demo of some of the key capabilities we have in the Veza platform. We covered some of the identity sources in this environment, including Okta, Azure AD, Active Directory. Think constructs like AWS IAM, Azure RBAC, and then data systems like Snowflake, S3, SQL Server. Veza is constantly adding more and more applications and data systems to this platform. We also have open authorization API capability where you can push your own authorization into Veza and visualize and perform all these operations we've been talking about. So this is an overview, and on to you, Rich.
Thanks, AK. My name is Rich Standliker, and I'm the Chief Strategist at Veza. I'd like to start by telling you a bit more about our strategy for integrations. Data can be found across many different systems, and covering them all can be challenging. Moreover, many organizations have custom-built applications or legacy on-prem systems for which we may not have native integrations. For these cases, we built our Open Authorization API, or OAA. It's intended to supplement native Veza integrations for those systems that aren't as widely used or popular across different customers. To make these easily available and help customers build these integrations themselves, we've created the OAA community on GitHub. Here, you can get Veza-supported connectors for popular apps like Salesforce, GitHub, Jira, Zendesk, and Looker. You'll also find developer tools, sample integrations, developer docs, and SDKs. There's a Slack workspace where you can ask questions to the broader user community and Veza experts if you get stuck. One of our customers used the Open Authorization API to integrate in their own custom-built customer success portal, where their internal support team uses to help their own customers resolve issues. As you might expect, there's a lot of sensitive data that a support rep could see when they're troubleshooting a customer environment. The customer wanted to understand exactly who could see and edit what data in this portal, especially because some of the support team was outsourced and offshore. A member of the customer's own security team built the integration to get all the goodness of Veza in this custom app. I asked him how long it took to do, and he told me 2 cups of coffee on a Saturday morning. Not too bad. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the longer-term strategy and what we see Veza becoming. We think about 3 work streams of 3 acts that bring together different aspects of the product and bring these aspects online and activate different use cases for customers. Act 1, where we spent the majority of our time in stealth, was building the foundational product to search and discover the truth of authorization to data. This included core data structures, the infrastructure to pull metadata into Veza quickly and scalably, and integrations to the many different data systems customers use to store and process their data. We've already started down the road in Act 2, which allows customers to compare and correct the issues with data permissions that they find. In essence, this is how we're building product functionality to allow different users and groups at a customer to leverage all the metadata in Veza from Act 1 in their business processes. You can't just show what the problems are. You need to give clear guidance and make it easy to fix things that you find. This is one of the most powerful things about how we built Veza. this core metadata foundation is so fundamental to many different products and aspects of security. And we have a clear roadmap on how to make a suite of different products built upon this same data foundation. We've already lit up the first two and have plans to keep expanding to make the product even more useful for security operations, DevOps teams, and distributed data owners. Then, in Act 3, the breadth of what we're planning comes to light, to be able to define and control. Much of Act 1 and 2 are really about getting the details of permissions at the granular level, combining them from the bottom up. Act 3 is about enabling customers to go from the top down. In addition, with all this data, we now have a uniquely powerful training set for AI and ML to really make a difference in finding solutions and innovation in this area. Once we have built out this translation layer of permissions in Act 3, we also have the understanding to be able to implement a new authorization standard across an organization and potentially across the industry. Have you ever asked yourself why there isn't an equivalent standard to SAML or OpenID Connect for authorization? The standards that do exist, like OAuth or OPA, either stay at the high level or provide so much flexibility that it's not translatable across implementations. It's really because of the immense complexity of authorization. Basically, you need to do all the work in Act 1 and 2 before you can understand enough to take on Act 3. But that's exactly where we're headed, to become the new standard for authorization. Now, let me pass it back over to Teju to wrap things up.
Great. Thank you, Rich, for that great introduction to our Open Authorization API and insight into Veza's product vision. And also, of course, thank you to Tarun, AK, Dave, and Riaz for sharing their expertise today as well. Now, as we close out today's session, we wanted to share more on how you can start engaging with us today. Now, if any of these data security use cases that we discussed appeal to you, be sure to get started with a free trial of Veza to test run on your own, or schedule a demo with our experts to further deep dive into the product. And don't forget to find us at a few events over the next few months. We'll be at RSA in just a couple of weeks here in San Francisco, Black Hat in August, and Gartner IAM also in August, both of which are in Las Vegas. And finally, we really appreciate all of you for joining our very first webinar today. We hope you enjoyed it, and we're looking forward to meeting you all in the upcoming weeks and months. Thank you.